Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Energy News Podcast today. You know, ESG is one of my all-time favorite discussions, and we've got somebody here that was on our roundtable last week, Kay Galloway. Kay, welcome, and we are so glad to have you here.
Well, Stu, thanks for having me back. You set the bar really high for the podcast today, but I'm so happy to be here again on Energy News Beat and happy to have this discussion today.
Boy, I'll tell you, you and Tracy Woods, as well as Andrew, just hit it right out of the park on our discussion. It was a great ESG discussion. And I mean, it was nice having, really three experts, because I'm an expert wannabe. And I just hanging around with you guys are all absolutely wonderful. And that's going to release first part of the week. And then this is going to come out later in the week. But and I'm going to bring up the slide deck here just to show everybody, you've got quite a, if you would, I hate to use the word pedigree, but you've got a pedigree going on here. And Kat, you're the CEO of Artemis Energy, and also the president of Bright Sky Environmental. What do you give us a little bit of your background on that?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty busy right now. Yes, I started Artemis Energy, and it is a Bitcoin mining company. I started that company this year. Really, my background is in environmental engineering, chemical engineering, and atmospheric chemistry. So I've got a chemical engineering background, and I've been doing environmental work now for about 20 years. So my background is really in kind of calculating, predicting, measuring air emissions from different industrial sources. And I really got into oil and gas in particular in about 2010, which was when the Eagle Ford Shale really took off here in Texas. And so once I got into oil and gas, I just loved it. I loved all the technical components of it. I loved working in the industry, and just decided that I wanted to work in oil and gas as long as the market would let me. So what I've been doing, especially for the last 10 years, is working with upstream and midstream oil and gas producers to understand where air emissions are coming from in their process. So a lot of work with understanding storage tanks, heaters, engines, flaring, pigging, anything in this industry. I've really been working with a lot of big operators to quantify that and to be in compliance with a lot of rules and regulations. And I had a career with large companies, large environmental consulting companies. And over the years, I really just wanted to be able to be in more control, kind of have my own say on how things are done. So I started Bright Sky Environmental in 2018. And that company, Bright Sky, we do all oil and gas, air permitting, environmental permitting. And that's really been really great. Of course, it was difficult with COVID, but we were able to get through it without having to let anyone go at the company. And things are booming right now for me with Bright Sky Environmental. I'm based here out of Austin. Our team is in Texas. So after doing this now for several years, and I've been really following the Bitcoin mining concept, and started off kind of helping different Bitcoin miners understand environmentally what they should be doing out there when they're mining Bitcoin, and quickly just really got into understanding the technology, understanding the process, and thought to myself, well, I've got a very different background than a lot of these Bitcoin miners here in the US, because my whole career has been environmental and ESG.
Let me just kind of go into here. And when you and I were chatting, I didn't know that Bitcoin was such an energy hog. And when you sit back, and the average person out there does not realize that miners don't put a mining hat on like the Seven Dwarves. They have servers, and they go after, the algorithms to try to mine Bitcoin.
Yes.
So I didn't realize it was such an ESG hog, draining so much power. And so with that, that's how you got involved, because your love for ESG. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's definitely a fair statement. And also the way that I see this is that mining Bitcoin, particularly from stranded, wasted, flared gas, okay, if we're
Yep.
going to use that gas instead of pulling from the energy grid, we are essentially not wasting that gas. We're going to use that energy for something different.
Right.
So when you talk about Bitcoin being an energy hog, absolutely. I know that you have some slides that you sent
Yep.
me on energy consumption in the Bitcoin industry. Do you want to share that with the
You bet.
viewers? Okay.
Let's bring that up right now. And let's go to the next slide here.
Okay.
And let's see. Yeah, let's go here. Okay.
Yeah. So this looks like it's updated through about April. And this is showing the global distribution of Bitcoin mining hash rate through about April 2021. And you'll see here that most of the energy in Bitcoin had historically been coming from China.
Mm-hmm.
Now this has changed a little bit. In June of this last summer, China actually banned Bitcoin transactions and Bitcoin mining. So essentially now their hash rate is down to zero.
Okay.
And I can tell you for a fact that a lot of that equipment that came out of all the Bitcoin mining in China is now here in the U.S. It's here in Houston, here in the Lone Star State. But if we just use our imaginations here, if we take this and fast forward it to today,
right,
the Cambridge Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index is now showing that through about August of this year, actually 35% of that global Bitcoin mining is now coming out of the U.S. with
no way.
With about 20% in Kazakhstan and about 10% in Russia, and then the rest to the other countries there. So US is now doing our part in that energy consumption. So,
if I know this, how fun is that? So we basically replaced China as the hogs in Bitcoin mining.
That's right. But so let's think about that. Let's look at the energy production in the US. Okay. So according to the EIA, if we look at data through 2020 in the US, about 40% of our energy came from clean burning natural gas.
Right.
20% from coal, 20% nuclear, and then 20% renewables. So one of the interesting things with Bitcoin is that you've got to have a steady power source. Okay.
Right.
So if the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing, you're not going to be creating Bitcoin. So really renewables can play a part of that, and they are. But really we're looking at natural gas, coal, and nuclear. So what I want to do at Artemis is not tap into any of that at all. Right. I don't want to pull power from the grid at all. And tons of Bitcoin miners do that. That's fine. That's their business model. But what we want to do at Artemis is pull wasted gas that's being flared and use that to be our power source.
This brings up a couple great questions. And when you sit back, and let's just take the Permian, because the Permian historically has not had great takeaway. And so Texans, the Texas oil companies have done a great job in reducing their flaring by dramatic amounts. And so that's a really cool thing. But how much gas does it take? Because you do have to have steady stream of power. Are there small enough wells that are not good enough for Bitcoin mining, and then there's some that are too profitable, or does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So you're right. Texas in particular has done a great job over the last couple of years to reduce flaring. There are lots of different reasons why flaring would be needed. One of those reasons why is lack of infrastructure. So if we don't have a pipeline takeaway for the gas that's being produced along with the oil,
Yep.
then you've got to do something with that gas. But there are other sources of flaring as well. Even emissions coming off of the tanks, off of other process equipment like dehydrators, that gas could be flared as well. So there are a lot of sources of gas out there. But yes, Texas has done a great job, not because of any regulation, but because the industries in Texas really bound together and said, we're going to reduce our flaring. Right. But from a Bitcoin mining standpoint, you do have to have enough gas in the system to fire the engine. So really, Bitcoin mining out in the field is that you've got this gas that would be flared, and instead of flaring it, you're going to put it into a natural gas generator, and you're going to create power on site using that gas. And then the power that you're creating on site from the natural gas is then used to power the equipment that's doing the Bitcoin mining. So that's kind of Bitcoin mining in a nutshell. But yeah, you've got to have enough gas to power a small engine. So really, the kind of the lowest you could do is maybe 15,000 scuff per day, which is pretty low. You could fit, maybe a 4x4 cube of mining equipment out there to do that. And then the sky's the limit. I mean, this can be applicable upstream, midstream, downstream. If you've got a lot of gas that you're flaring, really it's just a matter of scale and how much of that do you want to send to be combusted and create your power. So what's been really exciting is working with some of these larger producers who have a lot of gas that they're wasting flaring because they have nothing else to do with it. So those are the kind of projects that Artemis is going after, is really in the larger scale flaring.
Your website says, correct me, I have to fact check myself. That about me. I got to fact check myself. My wife tells me that all the time. But 50,000 to 50 million. Is that the ballpark that you guys normally pick up for Artemis Energy?
Yeah, so those are kind of the investment opportunities, right? Okay. So a little project, kind of the smallest you could go, might be around $50,000 to $75,000 for a small well. But we're working on some exciting projects across the energy spectrum where there's a lot of gas. So the main drivers in the price on those projects are you get to purchase the engine, the power generation portion of it. Okay. But then it's the computers, it's the mining equipment that can be the top dollar stuff. So if you want to spend a lot of money, you can get the top of the line, best Bitcoin mining equipment, but that is expensive, right? So there's a range, and depending on the comfort level of your investor, you can, really go along the spectrum for that.
I know where there's a bunch of used China equipment, so just kidding. I mean, we might be able to save some money here.
Exactly.
We'll have to talk after the show.
Okay, right.
But in the Permian, and let's say any of the fields, I've had some experience in putting pads and technology in pads and getting the signal out there. Not all the pads have a good enough technology back in order to get that stream. So you have to go wireless backbones out there from those things. How much bandwidth do you need to mine Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in addition to having a steady state of gas, a steady flow of gas, you've definitely got to have a good bandwidth. So if it's out there truly in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have a hard time mining out there. So, I mean, as long as you've got a cell phone signal, that's really what you need. Because yes, everything is done remotely. You've got to be able to have your servers talk back and forth. So as long as you can get a cell phone signal, that's great. There are some other issues that you have to deal with. Heat and cold can be difficult.
Okay.
So there's special huts that you can buy, and there, a lot of manufacturers are working on that, and we've got some great relationships with them. You've got a different set of circumstances for the cold versus the heat.
Yep.
Computers like to overheat, so you gotta baby them and take care of them.
And
So
dust.
and
They
dust.
hate dust.
They do not like to get dusty. So
No.
those are some considerations, particularly in West Texas, that you've got to be concerned about.
So are you focused in Texas only?
So we're starting with Texas because
Okay.
that's really the background from an environmental perspective that I'm
Okay.
very comfortable in. But we are talking with operators. We're working on some potential projects in Kansas, Michigan,
Nice.
really all over the board. And of course, you can go global too.
Yep.
That's not something that I'm doing yet, but I've got contacts who are talking about some global projects. But
Nice.
yes, so we're focusing on Texas. For me, the projects that we want to do, they've got to make sense from an environmental perspective.
Oh,
That's what we're all about. So we're not just out there just doing the upstream Bitcoin mining and making the money off of those. For us, the projects need to have both a financial, it's got to make sense financially, right? You're not going to get people to invest in a project if they're not going to get returns, but
right.
also it has to make sense on the environmental side. So our approach is somewhat different than maybe some of the other Bitcoin miners, in that we're approaching operators with an understanding of their air permits, their ESG considerations, carbon credits, tax credits. How can we approach this from an environmental side so that there's a true environmental business case as well as the financial business case? So it's somewhat different.
This is cool. And, I've always said that there is no ESG without accountability. And so with your background in the air measuring and everything else, your knowledge of accountability, you'll be able to articulate immediately saying, hey, we're pulling this amount of greenhouse gases out by providing this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And providing the data to support that. And also, I'm talking with a lot of cool projects, a lot of cool operators right now, that we can truly go carbon neutral on this. There are some ways to do it. So yes, if you are Bitcoin mining, using electricity from generators that are from natural gas, you're still combusting natural gas. So yes, there are still air emissions from the process. But if we're combusting them in an engine, they're going to be better than in a flare, because a flare is not going to have complete combustion. But we could potentially go all the way if you want to tie that with, say, for example, carbon sequestration.
Right.
So there's some project ideas that we're working on as to how to make Bitcoin mining truly carbon neutral.
Well, let's talk to Elon Musk, and let's see if we can start selling carbon credits, because Tesla is now in Texas, and he's making more money selling carbon credits than he is off of his own. I'm kidding. Never mind.
Yeah,
but,
no,
that would be.
I won't be dealing with Elon, but you're right. There are carbon credits, and there's a carbon market out there.
Yep.
So to those large operators out there who are running midstream terminals, chemical plants, refineries, consider the kind of financial benefit you can get from the carbon markets if you can reduce your flaring at your site, and what you can do with those carbon credits.
Oh, that is huge. And I do really respect, Kat, your reviewing of not getting the power from the grid and not pulling that from it, because ERCOT this last year, was not pleasant with all the prices.
No.
Oh, look at that. My power went up 75% in 15
Well, we talked about this in our roundtable last week for ESG. Yeah, I was here. I was in Austin. My mother-in-law was without power for several days. We couldn't get a hold of her. We couldn't get on the road. It was awful. So when things like that happen in your life, you're like, okay, well, I want the grid to be stable, and I want that power to be, available to the people who need it. And I know that some of these Bitcoin miners who are, reaching into the power grid, they're going to have the availability, the opportunity to turn down their power when they need it. Right. So
Right.
that's the argument that they're making, is that if we need to, we can shut down. So I do credit them doing that if needed. But, I'd rather just get the energy that's being wasted, because if you
Uh-huh.
think about it, that flared gas is doing nothing. Right. It's just being
Except bad
flared.
things.
Yeah, there's no energy that you're getting from it. So let's harness that energy and use it
I
for something.
this was just a thought, and I apologize for just totally derailing this conversation, which is what I normally do, but microgrids. And I'm sitting here thinking, for a small town, if you get a big enough flaring and you're starting to put in enough generators out there, you could then sell extra power to a local community out there. And again, turn that into another revenue driving source.
Certainly, if you've got a lot of gas out there, you could use that
It-
power for any number of things.
wow.
If you
Yeah.
look at a small community, and if an oil and gas operator wants to, make a splash with their community engagement, why not take that power, sell it back to the grid,
Right.
right? I heard of a cool idea of taking that power and then running a greenhouse off of it and using that to grow food for the community, right? Make
Right.
a community greenhouse. So there are all sorts of really cool ideas out there. And that's what I've really been enjoying, particularly over the last decade in oil and gas, to work with the companies who are, coming up with these cool ideas, to work with the operators themselves to design their facilities better.
Right.
So it's really, for me, it's all coming together as a nexus. I kind of think about the Venn diagram, right? There's oil and gas, there's technology, innovation, and really what I see where I'm at right now is just at the intersection of a lot of these cool concepts, and just bringing in, the background I've had. It's a really neat position to be in right now. I think the time is right for Bitcoin mining and oil and gas. It really is.
Um, Asking some questions on Bitcoin. The volatility of Bitcoin, if you bought it at $100, you're a bazillionaire now. I mean, if you sold any of it, it can swing $20,000. Everybody, how many? There's so many miners out there. What's the odds of you making money? I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, you make a good point, right? So it's very volatile, and if you can't stomach that volatility, you probably don't want to be in this industry. I mean, I'm invested in it, and definitely over the weekend it was a challenge, but you just get used to that, right? And you
Okay.
don't get emotional. But yes, there is a lot of opportunity for other Bitcoin mining companies,
Yep.
because what's interesting about Bitcoin is that a set number of Bitcoin are authorized every day. So there's a limited supply, and really the name of the game is to have as much computing power as you can in the network, to make the money off of the Bitcoin. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth. I personally think that, as Bitcoin continues to become more mainstream in our other financial markets, right? I mean, you've got just the legitimacy of Bitcoin is really increasing every day. You've got
Yep.
major companies, creating funds. They're putting retirements into Bitcoin, funds and stuff like that. So there is a lot of opportunity. And I think it's going to continue to grow, over the next 5, 10 plus years. And I really think that oil and gas and the energy industry overall is really set to be in an interesting symbiotic growth with Bitcoin, because, Bitcoin needs energy and the energy company needs something to do with wasted gas. So it's really a beautiful marriage of two industries.
Is it
that
El Salvador that he was trying to sell it? Was it, what country was that where he missed the main thing by seven minutes?
Oh, right. No, that was yeah, that was buying the dip the other day.
Yeah, I saw that one. Here's the president of a country, and he missed the dip just by a few minutes. I think that's.
I mean, he still did well on that purchase. He's fine.
Yeah, I missed it by 7 minutes. I missed it by several years, but we'll leave that one alone.
Yeah, got to start somewhere. There's always going to be another dip.
Now, I got a question for you. As regulations come around in the oil and gas industry, and we got to this energy crisis because of, in my opinion, 20 years of bad energy policies around the world. It's just not the US. Everybody said, we're going to go green without a plan. And you got to have a plan. That's my opinion. I mean, regulations on Bitcoin are coming. And how is that going to impact? Do you had any insight other than regulations are coming?
Well, I mean, what's the old saying about, two knowns in life are death and taxes, right? I think, regulations on our industry should probably be in there, right? So there's going to be regulations on Bitcoin. All I can talk about that I would know about is potentially the environmental regulations of it.
Okay.
But, even now, if you're mining Bitcoin, you've got to do it the right way environmentally, right? You can't just go out there and put an engine out somewhere, take gas and mine Bitcoin. Because if you do, that would be really bad, right? So the oil and gas business has been doing this for decades. We know what we're doing. We know if you have an engine, you have to have an air permit for it. You've got regulatory requirements, you've got reporting, you've got testing, performance testing on those engines. And if you've got enough, you may have to do greenhouse gas reporting. So those things are still the same. It's just taking that knowledge from the oil and gas business and putting it into the Bitcoin mining process. A lot of the folks out there doing Bitcoin mining have no clue on the environmental components of it, unfortunately.
I can guarantee you that.
I can guarantee you that. And so that's kind of how I got into this, as I was working with different Bitcoin miners and helping them, understand and get the permits that they need. And it was really kind of eye-opening to see, like I said, in the oil and gas business, we know how to do this. We've been running engines and managing engine testing and all of those requirements for such a long time. It's,
and
you just need to follow the rules.
Sorry, Kat. If you're a small operator, if you're a large operator, you don't care, and you can come in with a turnkey solution.
Yeah.
So you can sit there and go, I got bad gas. Wait a minute, I got gas that I'm flaring. Sorry about that. Gotta make sure my wife's not listening. She's gonna beat me up on that comment. But we got gas that we're flaring, and then you can say, "Great, here I am, Kay Galloway, with Artemis Energy, and we can come in and go. We know what to do from here to the actual mining. You can get everything done.
Get everything done.
Wow.
Do it the right way. I call it mining with purpose.
Nice.
We're going to do this the right way. It's got to have an environmental foundation to it. It's got to solve an environmental problem. And we're going to come in, we're going to partner together, and we're going to do it the right way. Get all the permits, get all the equipment. Right now, one of the issues on equipment is the lead time on getting the equipment. So it can take a couple of months. Before, even if we were to sign a deal today, it would be a couple of months before we could set all the equipment out there, but that's fine.
But Artemis also can, once you start having, because you guys are data, you guys can start then saying, hey, we're saving you X number of thousands of pounds of CO2 emissions.
Yes.
And then that can go into their ESG reporting.
Absolutely.
To their investors.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Because the investors want to know, And
Yep.
yes, we will help quantify that every year, say these are the reductions that you've made. And what's also very interesting is that the type of investors right now who are going into the Bitcoin projects are primarily private equity. And you're not seeing a lot of traditional banking going
Right.
for these kind of projects. I've got a couple of theories about that, but I think that the traditional banking kind of has a bad taste in their mouth for energy to
Yep.
start with, right?
Right.
But also you look at Bitcoin, which is kind of the opposite of a centralized banking model. So,
Right.
but you do have, the private investors and the PE firms who are really excited about Bitcoin mining. And then when you tie into it, the environmental components of it and how this can
Right.
actually solve problems, then people are lining up at the door to be a part of it, because it really is exciting.
I think that this brings up a really good point, is that if you're an oil and gas company and you're trying to entice or get new investors,
Mhm.
you can say, hey, look, if you're not wanting to invest in oil and gas, but you want to invest in something that has ESG,
Yeah,
this makes a lot of sense.
it does. And we can help you set up that business case. So every one of our projects will have a financial business case and an environmental business case. So being able to quantify those environmental benefits is really part of the puzzle for us.
Okay. So let's say I'm somebody like Pioneer,
Mhm.
some company, some small company or anything.
Mhm.
And I say, hey, Kat, I have no idea about Bitcoin mining. You will come in and do what?
So I'll come in and look at strategically the sites, the locations, where they are, how much gas is available from each site, put together a business plan from a logistics perspective. How many facilities are we going to build from a Bitcoin perspective?
Okay.
Quantify the emissions from the Bitcoin mining, compare it to their current emissions. Here's
Okay.
the delta, right? Here's the delta in emissions, and here is how much that can be worth for you. And it's worth different things to different operators, right?
Mhm.
If you have a company who has publicly said that they're going to eliminate flaring, well, maybe that's a little bit more valuable to them than
Right.
to others. So we work with them to understand, how to quantify those environmental benefits. Can we take this and put it on the carbon market? How much money will you get from that?
Yep.
Can we help you increase production? If that's a possibility, if you're not producing in a field because there's no gas infrastructure, well, now that you have something to do with that gas, let's talk about the finances of it and how that will open up
Nice.
other things for your company. So really we come in and we do the technical side, we do the high level finances, because the top brass at the company's got it. It's got to make sense financially. If it's not going to make sense financially, what's the point, right? So it's got to make sense financially. And then when you put in the environmental component of it, that's the other half of the puzzle. And it can really just be the cherry on top in a lot of cases. So we work together to do all that and put forth a project that we think would be a good fit for the company.
I just didn't. I love your enthusiasm about this whole process. This is kind of cool. It's fun
It
when you
is.
go out and you're not selling, you're evangelizing, and there's a difference.
Yeah.
And I applaud that. And your Bright Sky has been around for quite a while, and you're the president of it as well, too.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So we started Bright Sky in 2018. So
Okay.
a few years, not terribly long, but I had to have the career experience with the big consulting firms,
Yep.
really to know what I was doing before deciding to start off on my own. So
Kind of frightening being your own boss, isn't it?
it really is. It is, but also for me, I have I don't like to be told no. That's just one of my personal flaws. So having my own company,
Yep.
I'm not going to be told no unless it's from my clients or, the banks and stuff like that. But, at least if I make a mistake, I can blame myself.
I'm right there with you. But okay. Also, you're involved with Energy Strong. Tell us a little bit about Energy Strong.
Yeah. So Energy Strong is a great group out of Colorado that really advocates for the oil and gas industry on a national stage. So they've been around a few years. They did a lot of grassroots advocacy a couple of years ago when a lot of the oil and gas regulations were starting to take a turn for the worse in Colorado. And I can't pretend to know all of the details about all the Colorado rules because I'm here in the Lone Star State, and things have been really good for us. But anyway, so I was approached by Energy Strong because they wanted to do a podcast in which they talk about oil and gas environmental topics. So they offered me to come in and talk from my experiences in the air quality world. And I was a little hesitant at first because I had not historically listened to a lot of podcasts. So it was scary. It was a new thing for me, but I've got a great team working with Patrick Schauer and, Andrew and everyone. So it's been really great. And I've really enjoyed it a lot. So I feel like I've been able to, bring my voice to the stage in a small way, and really to interview a lot of other people who are doing some really cool things in the industry.
Fun?
Yeah, it's fun. I'm enjoying it.
It is fun when we can share that. And just as a shameless plug for my company, we also have the DI community, and we have helped oil and gas companies navigate through the Colorado legislation. And we have a way that we can go in and take all of the GIS data and map it out and then try to make sure we follow all the rules and get to the right thing. So if you ever need any help with that kind of thing with your ESG, we'll talk after.
There you go. I'm also on the board of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers.
Oh, nice.
And that's a great organization here in Texas. And I'm on the board and I help with environmental questions and advocacy. I do not. I just need to figure out how to clone myself. That's my next project. But no, that is a great organization, and they're doing a lot of really good things for the independent producers here in Texas as well.
Oh, that is great. So what's coming around the corner for Kat?
Well, really getting Artemis Energy off the ground is what I'm working on now. I've also got a lot of great projects that we're working on for Bright Sky. So it's growing. I'm bidding on some really exciting projects, building the staff at Bright Sky. But then also, like, my free time is definitely Artemis Energy, working with various other firms who are helping me market, and then meetings all over the place with various operators to present this business and environmental case to them. So I've been doing a lot of traveling, getting out on the road and talking about it a lot. I think that my 8-year-old daughter says that she's told her teacher that I am an environmental person, and that her teacher may want me to come to the class and talk about environmental topics. So that would be really exciting for me if I could get an audience of 8-year-olds and talk to them about energy in a realistic way. so that's coming around the corner too.
But Kat, that is something that the energy company, or the energy and oil and gas companies, have not done very well in the past, and that's educate folks.
That's right.
And so this is cool that you're bringing that message of education out.
Yeah, it's been exciting. I've been able to talk. I went to the University of Texas in Austin, and I keep a great relationship with them. So I've been able to come back and give some presentations to some of the senior design classes. I've been really engaged with some of the undergraduate groups, and I've been bringing on women from that program into Bright Sky. So, really starting with the education part of it, and being able to dispel some of the energy myths early on, while also, teaching them about,
Yep.
I gave a discussion in a senior plant design class, and, they're working on, well, how do I design this process and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I was asked to come in and give a 1-day lecture on the environmental considerations. So
Yep.
yeah, you want to design a chemical plant, but you can't just go build it, right? There are certain things from an environmental perspective you've got to do. So it's been fun to engage in that way, and really bring some of that knowledge out to the next generation.
I got two quick things, and that is, I have to have you share a story. Your first podcast came out not very long ago, and you were scared. You want to just tell us a little bit about being scared for your first podcast?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Podcasting is different because you don't really have the live audience, right? And it's
Right.
You're having a conversation, but it's different. So I have no problem with live audiences. I'm a blues musician. I'm a belly dancer. I have no problem with being on stage and doing things. But just for some reason, just the podcast was just really kind of nerve-wracking for me. And especially like getting it going,
Right.
getting them. You do a great job with your energy and excitement. And I commend you for that, because it matters. And when you're on a podcast and it's kind of quiet, it's hard to get started. But I'm learning a lot, learning about some of the mistakes that I make in the way that I talk into the, on the podcast, but it's a learning opportunity, and I'm really having fun now.
I'm not going to brag, but you're doing fabulous on the two that you've been on with me. And
Oh,
I want to give you a shout out and the rest of the gang over there at Energy Strong. So well done. And I'm looking forward to seeing y'all's videos cut and everything else as you migrate to video, because it does make it easier. And I'm just going to give you this little thing. It's easier to have a conversation this way, and the podcasts are a lot easier. So
absolutely.
You're an old pro at this already. So and we're going to have a little contest with this. We're going to buy some Energy Strong memorabilia and things, and we'll figure out how to get people to watch this and contact you, and we'll figure that out, and we'll buy the merch. So
awesome.
We'll figure that out. And Kat, thank you very much for stopping by. And we'll get this, all your contact information will be in the show notes as we get this thing out, rolling out. And thank you. Look forward to visiting with you again.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure. I've enjoyed it, Stu. And, looking forward to more conversations in the future.